Hey everybody, welcome to Reality to Cinema News Flash Edition. Now in this episode we're going to be reviewing Spider-Man Far From Home. Now before we get things started, just want to give everybody a fair warning that this video will be dealing with spoilers for Avengers Endgame. So right now we'll prop up that big old spoiler alert, give everybody the heads up. Because Spider-Man Far From Home, the plot very much deals with the repercussions and the consequences of the events of Avengers Endgame, and it's pretty cool how they deal with the aftermath of Avengers Endgame. It's very much, it goes right into it from the get-go. We learn that a minor spoiler alert for Spider-Man Far From Home, but not a huge one. We learned that, as we know before, just for context reasons, in Avengers Endgame, before Avengers Endgame ever came out, we learned that, the snap is called the snap, which basically, when Thanos snapped his fingers and half of the universe's population, basically all living things, half of all living things just were gone, disappeared, destroyed, killed, whatever you want to call it. That's still kind of up for debate if they were actually dead or not, but for all intents and purposes they were gone, basically. So that's called the snap. Now we learn that the return of half of the universe's population is now called the blip, appropriately named the blip. So we learned that right from the get-go. Well, it's pretty cool. Hey, if the snap has a thing, the blip should be a thing too, am I right? So we learned that right from the get-go, and that question, one of the many questions that was left over from Avengers Endgame was, so luckily for the casting purposes, most of the main cast, well, all of the main cast of the Spider-Man series were snapped. They were affected by the snap. They were, for lack of better terms, snapped. So they were gone with 50% of all the living things in the universe. So they didn't age. Peter, of course, and all the main cast were, caught in the snap, so they didn't age. So they were able to explain that and answer that question right off the bat. So, I think sometimes as Marvel fans we kind of have to be a little patient, because we immediately come up with these questions like, oh, how do you explain this and how do you explain that? And a lot of times, for the most part, Marvel has been able to explain and give answers to these questions later on. I think, we should kind of be aware that this is a larger universe, and not every question is going to be answered in one bang, in one film, in one outing, I guess, or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like almost episodic, how they do this, how they write it, but, I think it's pretty cool that, sometimes you just have to be patient, like, alright, things will be answered as they come. But, that's one of the questions that was luckily answered right from the get-go. And along with this, we see Peter Parker and Spider-Man, aka Spider-Man's, basically how he's dealing with the world after Avengers Endgame, along with everybody else, but it's particularly interesting to see Peter dealing with it because, as we know, again, spoiler alert, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, Peter's mentor and father figure, gives up his life at the end of Avengers Endgame to save the universe. And now, this is our first look into the Marvel Cinematic Universe without Tony Stark, without Iron Man. This is post-Iron Man Marvel Universe. It doesn't take long for us to go into there. It's only been a couple of months, so we see, obviously it's been longer for Peter, aka Spider-Man, having to deal with, the aftermath of Avengers Endgame and the losing of his father figure, his mentor, Tony Stark. But it's very interesting to see how they use this as a character arc for Peter in this, because remember, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Peter is very much a young superhero. He's not an experienced one as of yet. He's very much learning still, and he's very much trying to decipher if he even wants to do this. You know, he seems gung-ho in the other movies, but in actuality, it's, at least from my interpretation, it seems like he's doing it because it is the right thing to do. As he said in Civil War, his quote from Civil War was very, very telling and touching. If he doesn't do something, it's almost like he's letting it happen, in a sense. And that's not verbatim, but he said this to Tony Stark himself in that scene where Tony goes to recruit Peter to fight with him in the Civil War against Captain America. And he tells him, you know, that quote is very telling. But now it seems like, in a way, Peter's kind of thinking like, is this what he really wants? You know, we've all been there where we think we want something, and then when we're kind of in that path, we start kind of second guessing a little bit, which is normal. You know, we start to think, is this really what I want? Is this what makes me happy? And I feel like Peter is at that crossroads at the beginning of this film. He's very much, you know, he has a huge crush on MJ now, and he pictures a normal life with her, with his friends. You know, they go on this trip to Europe, or they're going on this trip to Europe, and he pictures a normal life, and then all this basically happens. All this Avengers business happens with Nick Fury, and I think it's also a part of it is also he sees this world that's remembering Iron Man, and he sees an image. He remembers the man himself, and he wonders if he can live up to that. It's almost like maybe the sun is shining too bright, and he doesn't think he can make it up to. He can almost like Icarus with the wings. He feels like his wings are going to melt if he gets too close to the sun, and this legend of Iron Man, you know, which he has seen firsthand, almost is like that sun. Maybe he thinks he's going to fly too close to it, and his wings are going to burn. He doesn't think he's worthy of that, of that mantle, of taking over that mantle, even though Tony specifically chose him. So it's very interesting seeing Peter, aka Spider-Man himself, dealing with this, because it's not, even though we've seen in the other interpretations of Spider-Man, we've seen him kind of come into his own, I don't think we've seen it like this. I don't think we've ever seen Spider-Man kind of almost questioning whether he could be the hero that's needed. He's always kind of been thrown into something right off the bat, so he's never had to kind of, other than obviously the Ben Parker thing, you know, with power comes more responsibility. I understand that you know, he's obviously had to deal with being a hero. I'm not saying, you know, that any interpretations don't deal with this, but I feel like it seems different in this one. Instead of Ben, we have, you know, the legend of Iron Man, Tony Stark. I keep calling it a legend because by the events of this film, the events of Avengers Endgame are very much, I mean, you see mantles. They travel to quite a few destinations, and it seems like in every destination there's some sort of either makeshift tribute, some sort of makeshift shrine to Iron Man in every part of the world. Because, I mean, he not only saved the world, he saved the universe at the end. I mean, he saved the universe at the end of Avengers Endgame. Yeah, so, I mean, it doesn't get much more heroic than that, and I feel like that weight might be put on, or Peter might feel like that weight is put on his shoulders and he doesn't know if he can handle it in some degree. And I feel like it's really cool how they explored this in the film. I very much enjoyed that story arc, and I think it's the center of the plot in that sense. Like, we see Tony physically mentoring, like he's there as a person mentoring him, in Homecoming, and now it's like he's not there anymore. So it's not so much him telling him, Peter, you can do this. He showed him, he selected him as his successor, and now we're wondering, or Peter's left wondering if he can even handle it. And then the timing, I guess, for Mysterio is just perfect, because here comes Mysterio, who's presented as this hero, and almost like a very Iron Man-esque hero, which I think was obviously done intentionally. I mean, it's almost like he's Iron Man's doppelganger in this, and even though us Spider-Man fans, we know of Mysterio. Anybody who's a Spider-Man fan, this isn't really a spoiler alert, but Mysterio is very much a well-known villain in Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery. So we see the trailers, and we're obviously a little bit skeptical on whether Mysterio finishes the film as a hero. But again, they present him as this almost Iron Man-esque hero who's very, he's got some heroic moments in the middle of somewhere in the first act when he takes on the elementals, as they call them, the fire, water, sand beings that we see in the trailers, and it's almost like he takes on the mentor role for a little bit for Spider-Man, for Peter Parker. And I think it's a very poignant time, because Peter is very much dealing with the aftermath of Tony's death, and to see this guy, this heroic guy, very much reminds him of Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, and it deals with that in a degree of, like, we see this guy, this Spider-Man, looking for guidance in a sense, looking for himself as a hero, looking for his identity as a hero. And I feel like this movie is his, in a sense, for coming out party, so to speak, as a hero. Because he very much throughout the film explores what he is, what his identity is as a hero, if he even is a hero, if he's meant to be a hero. These are all questions that I think he's dealing with throughout the film, or he is dealing with throughout the film. And it's very interesting. I very much enjoyed that aspect of it. The action pieces were amazing. I mean, they're up there with all the other Marvel films and all the other interpretations of Spider-Man. We know we've been lucky, we've had some pretty great interpretations of Spider-Man from Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and I think Tom Holland is right up there. He took the ball and he ran with it. He creates so many levels for this character of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. It's just like he's right up there with the trifecta of Tobey and Andrew and himself, obviously Tom. Like he does a really great job in this film as both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, as I'm sure is no news to anybody who's seen him in action. And as far as the overall film, the plot was very, very, I think it was well written. I mean, the film was well written. The plot is a very interesting one. As we said, we're dealing with the aftermath of Avengers Endgame, going right into this arc for Spider-Man. It was presented very well, and I'm being very vague for a reason, because I want everybody to go out there and check this film out. Where I would rank it as far as Spider-Man films, honestly, I'd put it right up there with Spider-Man 2 from the original trilogy. And there are some surprises. I tell you, stay for the after credits. There are definitely surprises that I think are going to completely change the MCU big time. I mean, there's going to be... I can't imagine anybody, Marvel fan, non-Marvel fan, I can't imagine anybody is going to see what's coming in these after credits. I was taken aback, very surprised, and very much intrigued, and very much anticipating what Marvel is going to be doing down the road in the MCU. It really seems like Avengers Endgame was just the beginning. Contrary to the name of the movie, it really seems like the universe is definitely expanding in a different direction, and the saga of Captain America and Iron Man, and we're still not quite sure what they're going to do with Thor, but I feel like the original Avengers is similar to like in the, I don't know if anybody ever watched the 90s, well of course if you're listening to this channel you probably watched the 90s series of Spider-Man. The characters like Captain America and Iron Man were very much mentioned as, you know, heroic figures at times, and I feel like now their arc is been very perfectly wrapped in a bow, and what they're going to do next with the MCU can only progress, I think. And I love that we have these great films from these characters, and like I said, they wrapped it up very neatly in a bow, and now we get to see, in a sense, what their legacy is going to create down the road, and I'm loving it. So definitely stay tuned to more of the MCU. I mean, it's just like I said, guys, it's only just beginning, especially after you see this film. I think anybody that was questioning where the Marvel Universe was going to go after Endgame, I think your questions, I mean, they might not be answered, but I think you're going to be very intrigued to continue watching after watching Spider-Man Far From Home. So, again, thanks guys for checking out my review on Spider-Man Far From Home. I hope it was, if you weren't hyped enough, I hope you're even more hyped after listening to this. Like I said, I was very vague. I didn't want to give away too much, but I will be doing another video, probably with more spoilers, because there's so much to this film that I definitely want to explore further down the road. So again, thanks guys for listening to my channel, Reality to Cinema, and my review on Spider-Man Far From Home. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and click on that bell icon so you can be notified every time I have new content up, which will be often. And anyway, thanks guys for watching, and continue to flip the switch from reality to cinema.